So I took melatonin like 5 minutes before I decided to record this. I don't know why I'm doing this right now. I just needed someone to talk to, I guess. We're in the middle of a historic blizzard, which doesn't actually mean that much where I'm from. Like, we're all fine. We just don't get snow that often, so they're dealing with the roads and stuff, and I'm off work, and I'm kind of spiraling into madness. So I wanted to talk a little bit about something. I don't have a script, though. I've had some video topics that I want to discuss, but I just haven't been willing to sit down and write a script. And this, I thought it would be okay for me to just kind of talk about, because it's more a discussion of like art and ideas than it is about me like having a grand point. I don't really have a thesis for this video because I don't totally know what I think of it yet. But maybe we can discover that together while we get to the end. So you might have guessed from the title that I'm going to go into some drama. It's not really that dramatic. And I'm also just want to say up front that I don't know that much about this woman. I haven't watched any interviews with her. I know very little about her personal life. I hope to keep it that way. I don't want to know anything about her as a human being. Everything that I've heard has been on accident. This is the first book of Naomi Novik's that I ever bought. And I got it, I think, for my 12th birthday, maybe 13th. My parents took me to a Barnes & Noble and said, you can have all the books you want. And then I started picking things up and they were like, okay, you can have like 5 books, which is still a lot. And it was a really nice birthday. And this was one of the ones I picked out. I had never heard of it before. And I was way too young to be reading it. It's just like a young adult fantasy book. It's not really like crazy, but there is a sex scene. And that rocked my world when I was 12. I could not believe that I was allowed to read that. You can put those in books? I didn't even know sex was real yet. I was very, very obsessed with it from the first time I read it, and I have read this book many, many times since I first bought it. It's like coming apart. There's rips and stuff. I want to get a new copy eventually because this one has kind of been through it. 3 more Naomi Novik books. Not 3, 4 more Naomi books that I own. One of which is Spinning Silver. That looks so much like Uprooted, but it's not the same as it at all. And I honestly read this one once when I first bought it and had no memory of what happened. And I read it so fast that I literally did not retain any information. I am going to reread it soon. I want to see if it's as good as I remember because I don't remember any facts about what happened within it. If you've read any Naomi Novik books, I assume it's going to be these. These are her most recent books. It is a trilogy. I'm currently working on the 3rd one. I felt like I had finally done enough in my personal life to deserve reading this because I loved the first 2. The 3rd one is not as good as them so far, so hopefully it picks up, but we'll see. I own 5 of her books, and that's way more books that I own from any other author, so I'm going to go ahead and call this a win for Naomi. I don't want to talk too much about any of these books individually. I could talk a lot about how I think Uprooted is amazing, and I could talk a lot about how I think these Scholomance books are amazing, at least the first 2. I could not tell you anything that happens in this one, but I don't really want to talk about the content of her work. I want to talk about things that I have found out after being her fan that make me go, oh, weird. The weird things about her and her work are not necessarily career-ending offenses to me or to anyone, I think. It isn't like a hot topic. You probably haven't heard about this drama unless you are deeply steeped in book community stuff. But I just find it really interesting when you really, really love someone's work and then you find out they are not an infallible person. I am really intrigued by where you go with that information, I guess, because I, for a long time, emulated her as a writer. This is such an embarrassing soft launch, but I am a person who writes in my free time, and I am currently working on a young adult fantasy novel, which I think is the most embarrassing sentence you can say online until it's published, and then it's cool. Shout out to M for crocheting me this book sleeve. You're a real one. It keeps falling off the chair, though. I have always said, and I will continue to say, that my biggest inspiration stylistically is Naomi Novik, and I love her books, and I want to write like her. That was always the goal, was to do Naomi Novik. I'm going to start with what I think is the most recent Naomi Novik fiasco, which you probably If you've heard of any of these, it's probably this one. I will not talk about it a lot in depth, both because I'm not the person to talk about this topic. You'll see why in a second. And I, with Cindy, covered it. Why am I calling her with Cindy? Cindy of With Cindy, formerly Read with Cindy, covered it well enough that I don't think I need to go into it in depth. So if you have heard of Naomi Novik or read any of her books or even just seen this one in bookstores, I'm assuming it's this one, this series, the Scholomance series. The big contentious thing about this series came down to 2 issues that both had to do with the fact that Naomi Novik is a white woman who was writing non-white characters. This series is pretty diverse just based on the world building. It is a magic school, dark academia vibe, and all of the characters are from around the world and they all get sent to the same school. So it's like if Hogwarts was woke. That's all wizard children are sent to the same school. And so it is just built into the world building that there are a lot of people from different cultures, and they're talking about these factions of wizards, like enclaves of wizards from completely different countries. They are kids who they really break into groups based on the most popular languages, and they all have to learn different languages because they have to learn spells in different languages, which is very interesting world building to me, I think. The interchange of cultures is a very important part of the world building of this book, down to the fact that the protagonist is a half white, half Indian girl, which is all to say that this is a book written, or a series written by a white woman that talks a lot about race and different cultures, and it is not that surprising that she kind of fucked up a little bit in a couple of ways. Naomi Novik loves world building, and most of the content of these books, especially the Deadly Education books, are really tied up in just explaining how wizard culture and society works. She talks a lot about how people in this school don't get to basically shower very often because there are monsters everywhere. Going to this school is like a death sentence. You are constantly fighting monsters, and going to the showers alone, you're gonna get killed by some kind of beast from the sewers. So first of all, none of the characters. You can just think about that throughout the first 2 books, how much everyone stinks all the time. None of the characters are ever taking showers. And the hygiene practices within the school are weird because of that. They have very specific ways that they can do things in order to not constantly be risking their lives. One little detail that she included in the world building, and I believe the first book, was about a specific kind of monster called a lock leech, which would lay eggs in dreadlocks. And she talked a lot about how most people in these school have very, very short hair because monsters can, I'm not picking it back up this time, I'm sorry, because monsters can get in that shit and cause you problems. And specifically the bringing up of dreadlocks, she goes into a little bit more. It was, in hindsight, weird to just include that. I don't think she did it on purpose. I think she just went in a weird place. So the association between dreadlocks and kind of being unsanitary or not unhygienic is bad, and the way that she wrote the paragraph was bad. What is good is that in future copies of the book, Naomi Novik made the decision, or maybe her manager, I don't know who makes these decisions, but someone decided to cut that paragraph from the book, essentially. It was not an important part of anything, so it is just not in future printings. I don't think it is in my copies of the book, so it wasn't an experience I organically had when I read through it. But that was the first issue with this series, was her weird thing about dreadlocks that was so unnecessary. I don't know why that happened. And then the second issue is more of a fundamental thing with the series, but a lot along very similar lines. The protagonist, like I said, is Indian, and some people are very unhappy with the way she was portrayed, and say that it feeds into certain stereotypes. Again, having to do with the characters being unsanitary, there are people who are like, well, that's a bad look for you to have your brown girl protagonist be canonically stinky. Which, that issue, I'm a little bit less sold on because everyone in the school is under these conditions. Obviously, I don't get to dictate what rubs people the wrong way. Other people just think that she wasn't portrayed as very Indian, that it was just like a detail that was thrown in, that it doesn't actually have much to do with her culture. I think this series is so interesting because it takes a swing where a lot of white authors would not. And you will see that in, I think, most books. that are on shelves right now that most white authors are not willing to write non-white characters, especially for their protagonists. And Elle is, from the beginning, defined as not white. And that is cool. That is a cool thing that Naomi Novik chose to make that choice. And it did, and it does lend itself to the story thematically, I think. I think, personally, it is a really big part of Elle's arc because, oh my God. I don't want to talk about the plot of these books, but I will bring up a specific line from the third one that I just read recently. She's very British, and it says, Mom. I'm going to say Mom. I'm going to read this as if she is American. If Mom needs to go somewhere, she thumbs a ride and someone stops for her. If she's hungry, she just asks the universe if there's anything to spare, and more often than not, someone going by will pause and offer her something to eat or invite her to the house for dinner. I'm more likely to be required to hand over exact change before the universe grudgingly allows me to buy a bus ticket and a stale bun. And I can never tell how much of it is me, scowling in resentment, and how much of it is other people looking at a dark-skinned girl instead of my pink and gold mom smiling at them, and not being able to tell only makes me scowl at them more. That is from The Golden Enclaves, pages like 85, if you want to go check my work. The point being that this is a big part of Elle's character, is how ostracized she feels all the time, and that is mostly has to do with wizard stuff that has to, like, her abilities are not as kind as her mom's, basically. Her mom is a healer, and Elle is a death mage, essentially. She is othered in her communities because of that, which ties into her othering as a brown girl who lives in England, which is notoriously not very good to people of color. I'm saying that as an American, which is fun. So that's the kind of thing that you will not see super often in the books, which I think is good, because it would be really weird if Naomi Novik, as this white woman, was writing a story about racism, but it is part of her character. And I don't know how people feel about that. I think it is good for white authors to not default to whiteness, because again, the story isn't about Elle being biracial or being Indian or anything, but that lends itself to her character in a lot of subtle but really, really important ways that I think would make the book worse if she had two white parents. Diversity is not about benefiting white people, but I do think it is depriving everyone of better stories to not include these aspects in them just because you are a white person writing and you default to all your characters look like you. I don't know. But there are two other things I want to talk about that involve Naomi Novik, and I'm saving the best for last, and that might be a bad idea because there's really like a plot twist in this video that if you haven't heard of her, you are going to hopefully freak out about. But I'm going to do a little mini point between those and go back to Uprooted. I don't know why I'm standing them up. None of this matters. This book is weird, and I'm willing to admit that now that I have said for years this is my favorite book, and it is kind of weird. The main character of this book is 17 years old, and she super doesn't have to be. A characteristic trait of Naomi Novik books is that her female leads are always, like, way smarter than a 17-year-old. They have so much more reasoning and capacity for just anything going on in there. But she is 17 years old, and they tell you that at the very beginning in the first chapter, and she falls in love with this wizard guy who is immortal and has been here for, like, hundreds of years, and it's not great. Isn't a fantasy age gap interesting? I feel like the easiest vehicle most people have for this is Twilight, but I don't think that does it justice, I guess, because Edward Cullen, and also, I'm not a big Twilight person, so I don't know a lot about this. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not picking up on the vibes well because I don't know a lot about the entire series, but from what I've seen of Twilight, which is the first movie, Edward Cullen is a teenager. No matter how old he is, he acts like a teenager. He goes to high school, and he has teenager vibes because the way that he reacts to emotional stimulus is very teenagery to me. I think that it is easy to forget about the age gap in a story like that because both of the characters act very young, and they are placed within the same context. They meet in high school. It's not like Bella meets him. Bella is a high school girl and meets him at like a corporate job or something. And this is a similar thing because I think the main character acts more mature for her age than she necessarily needs to, but ultimately there is absolutely a gap between them in that sense, and the book reminds you of it a lot. I'm going to read you a line from the sex scene. I really lost my mind when I found out that you could write sex in books. Found it. This is the main character basically gets into his bed. The main character basically gets into his bed while they're like the night before they go to war or something, goes into his bedroom and wakes him up and kisses him. And he says, "Listen, you impossible creature. I'm a century and more older than..." "Oh, be quiet," I said impatiently, of all the excuses he might have used. That's a good excuse, right? This is page 353 of Uprooted. So this is more up my alley because this isn't my fave being problematic as much as it is my fave being like trashy. And I support trashy writing choices. I love trashy things. This is common in romantasy fiction, so I am not that concerned about it, but I think it's funny. I think it's a funny thing to realize about something you love long after the fact. Oh yeah, that was weird. What happens in the art we enjoy can tell us a lot about ourselves, but it is not ourselves. And we are not committing the actions that are committed by characters in books. And if anything, I think this is just a very good place to, not totally without consequence, but without major consequence, explore interesting themes that you should not explore in real life. You should not be exploring each other's bodies if you are 17 and he is 150 years old. Where do you draw the line in the things that you enjoy? For me, it is clearly way past fantasy age gap. I'm so far beyond caring about that, but it is something that I used to care about. And I think it is very interesting when you encounter something that you are normally opposed to in something by someone you enjoy, because there is a branching path where it's like, this knowledge has changed my enjoyment of this person's art. Do I compromise on my morals? I mean, compromise is a bad word, but do I reinterrogate that original belief? And does that make me kind of a weak person for changing it the second that I encounter something that I enjoy that has that thing I said was bad in it? Does that mean that I just have no values? Or does that mean that the value I had was dumb? In any case, this is a pretty minor problem. But we're about to talk about something that might really ruin it for you. See, I really like these books and I recommend them to people. And when I do that, I do not tell them this little fact about Naomi Novik that might keep them from wanting to read anything she's ever written. And it is that Naomi Novik is one of the co-founders of AO3. That is not the thing that is going to give you pause, right? If you are someone who enjoys the things that I enjoy, hopefully you think that's cool. AO3 is kind of a cool website. I think that they are genuinely doing something that is good for the internet to create a space where all writing and fan works are allowed and very well tagged and easily organized. I think the AO3 tagging system has genuinely changed the way that we talk about things that we read, and that's very, very cool. But when you hear that, you're going to think, oh, did she write anything on there? Well, yes. Let me pull up her page for you. Award-winning author Naomi Novik has written 512 fics on AO3 over a just really large series of fandoms. The most recent one was posted almost a year ago today. It was posted in January of 2024, so she's still doing this. She wrote some Game of Thrones fan fiction recently, and if that, never stop doing what you enjoy, genuinely. This is not an ironic statement, okay? You can be a 50-year-old woman with a very, very successful writing career, writing books that win awards, writing many books, more than these 5 over the course of her career. You can be that woman, and you can also write erotic fan fiction and post it, and people know that it's you doing it, and you can just do that. Because it brings you joy, it makes you happy. And that is good. It is good to do things that make you happy. This is not the bad thing. Now let's just go through some of these fandoms. There's a lot going on in here. We've got a lot of Harry Potter. I think that's expected. 1 Top Gun, some Spider-Man, some Ocean's 11. Ooh, that might be interesting. Dracula, the original novel. Teen Titans. Dragon Age 2. Dragon Age is why she wrote these books. I'm saying Naomi Novik saw The Circle and Dragon Age and she was like, ooh, the Scholomance? The prototype for the Scholomance trilogy? I know that to be true. Wait, I'm gonna look at these. They're both Fenris X Male Hawk, you guys. I'm gonna have to read these later. Sorry, it's over for me. Okay, I lost the plot for a second. Inquisition fics. Iron Bull. Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm having a great time right now, actually. I'm having a really great time. These are all Picard XQ. This is good. She's one of us. She's a Fujoshi. Sherlock Holmes, the original novel. Whatever. I need to get out of here. I'm so far beyond the plot, but I can't look away. House MD. That's for someone I know. I want you to know that House MD is in here. X-Men. The Avengers, Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon, which I did not know was a thing that existed, and I'm going to have to go down this rabbit hole very soon. Captain America, Fast and Furious, Thor, Game of Thrones, Stargate. For whatever reason, when I first found her AO3 account, I was immediately sent to her Supernatural works, so I want to take a look at those because I want you to have the experience that I had when I found this information out. So first of all, I'm ecstatic. It is really cool to me that someone who I love the work of so much created this site and used it because that makes her feel very human to me. And I don't know, it just brings me a lot of joy that she worked on this project that I genuinely think is very, very good for fandom culture and writers in general and the internet. So you're in that space and you open AO3 and you find the things that she's written and you find Supernatural, TV show, 2005. And you find fics from between 2007 and 2013. So these are not recent stuff, but it's recent enough. And you will find that a lot of them are explicit, 32 out of 36. She writes a lot of gay fan fiction. She loves Slash. So maybe it's going to be I never watched the show. The short one and the Angel. Destiel. Super Hell Boys, right? Maybe it's going to be that. 33, Dean Winchester. Ex Sam Winchester. The grief that I experienced in this moment was truly strange. I left my body as it was happening because I was feeling this immediate sense of disgust and shock and denial that someone who I respected so much wrote this. And then I was outside of myself. I was looking at myself and I was going, why does this matter to me? Genuinely, why does this matter to me that she wrote this? I cannot tell you why exactly, but I really want to just swim in that feeling so I can understand where it came from. I think it is bad that for a long time on the internet, one of the most popular pairings in this TV show was two fictional brothers. I think it's weird that there were so many romantic things about those two. I think it's weirder that there was so much explicit content about these two. I already have a strange feeling about creating fanworks, especially erotic fanworks, that surround properties that involved real actors. I'm not going to say that it's bad outright, but personally, I am not very comfortable with that because that is a real person's body that you are writing about and talking about. Even though the character is fictional, there is a real human being there, and that is icky to me. I don't think that's a hard line that everyone needs to draw, but it's kind of mine. So I'm already not on board with the Supernatural fanfiction in general, kind of. For me personally, I was not ever going to be there, even if I liked Supernatural, which I did not. I was not there for that. But then it's not even about Destiel. It's about Wincest. It all goes back to Wincest somehow. And at first I was like, why, God? Why me? Why does my fave have to be the one who wrote Wincest fanfiction? But I still read her books. And, the thing is, it doesn't change the way I see her professional work. And that's almost comforting, I guess. I mean, why do people enjoy this fictional incest? Because immediately, first of all of the quote-unquote problematic tropes to include, incest is the one that is least bad. I've thought a lot about why we have to draw the line here, like why that immediate disgust comes up. Because it is usually still two very willing people, right? I mean, look at the Folgers coffee commercial. Like that was true erotic passion right there between those two people. And if it's genuinely just love that they have for each other, can you deny them of that? Give us a sequel to the coffee commercial. This is big. This is important. It wasn't. I don't know. No one is being harmed by that necessarily, except for you two and your future babies. But especially when it's a couple that cannot conceive children, maybe I should just let them be weird, right? I don't know. Just play in the space with me, okay? Let's just play in the space. Just looking at the fact that I see this and I say, oh, I think that's gross. Does that have to extend to all the other work created by this writer? For me, it hasn't. For me, I've been able to completely compartmentalize this knowledge that I have, this cursed, forbidden knowledge, and still genuinely love her writing. But should that be possible? Should I be able to separate this fact of the things that she enjoys, the things that she has enjoyed in the past? She doesn't write anymore, so maybe she doesn't anymore. But should I be able to separate this stuff that I find gross from the stuff that she writes that I find not gross. It would be different if she was writing like truly despicable things on the side, and she was still doing it to this day, and she was constantly getting wrapped up in like awful things. Then I would just not read her books anymore. I loved Harry Potter as a kid, and I will never be able to reread those books or enjoy any Harry Potter media, even in a way that doesn't give J.K. Rowling money. I will never be able to do that again, because I will just be thinking the entire time about how J.K. Rowling does not respect my human rights. So if it was something like that, it would be so easy for me to just let go of her. It's just weirder than that. It's weirder than just being problematic. It's weirder than being canceled. If I had a friend who wrote this kind of fan fiction, would I stop being their friend? Immediately, I think, yeah, probably. If I knew someone and I found out one day that they were actively writing incest fan fiction, I would probably be like, no, never mind. And if I found out that they used to, I would probably be like, oh, that was weird that you did that. And I would expect them to agree with me that it was weird that they did that. But I don't know this woman. And also, she's a grown woman. She has a family and like a life. Like, is she not allowed to do this? It's not up to me to decide, obviously. The video essay genre is something that is very much laughed at right now. And that is, I think, for good reason, because most video essays, it has just become very oversaturated, and a lot of the work is not saying anything. It is just summarizing information that you can passively listen to while you do chores or play a video game or whatever, which is fine, but it is not really an essay. An essay has to have a point, a thesis. An essay, I think, has to have a discovery, some kind of like revelation, some kind of encounter with the soul. Something has to be said. And I don't know if I'm saying anything. You know, I was 12 years old when I read this book, and I knew then already that I wanted to be a writer. I was already writing a lot. I think 12 was around the time that I started my first novel, which was adorable, and I still have it, and it is very cute, and it makes me very happy to reread it and think, oh my God, I loved this, and I loved writing it. And so bad and so stupid, right? And I saw these people who could create genuine, amazing fiction. I saw them as gods. I did not think about the fact that a person was making choices. I did not think about the fact that a person could make mistakes in a book. I didn't think that was possible, because these books were these like God-given things. And the same thing about all media, about video games and TV. I didn't understand that you could do bad at that, because it was already so incredible that it existed at all. And then I got older, and I still loved the same books, and I had to deal with the fact that they were written by people, and nothing that a person does is ever perfect. No piece of art has ever been perfect or without flaw. There is always going to be something to contest, and there is something to mourn in that. It is difficult to deal with the fact that the things I love are made by people like me. They are not special. They are not different. They are people who write fan fiction, and people who have fun on the internet, and people who make really dumb choices in their books and then have to change it in the future. They are just people. And I guess that's what this video is about, right? Just the fact that I found out one day that this author I loved was a person and not an entity, and I still love her, but it feels different. I don't really have a conclusion, though. I'm still not saying anything. I don't know if this counts as a video essay. I struggle with the idea that anyone is watching these. It really scares me that there are people who leave comments on these videos who are not like my 8 friends who I originally posted them for. And I really hope you get something out of them if you are someone who I don't know as a person. It's really, really cool to me that you exist and that you are watching this and listening to this right now and hearing my voice. Anyway, I got channel art and header. It is so good, right? Like, look at my channel right now. Look at the art. It is so good, right? I commissioned a friend whose Instagram account I don't trust myself to pronounce it correctly, so I'm going to put the information on screen. Yeah, you should go follow him. He is a really good artist. He hasn't posted a lot recently, but he is just a really cool artist, and I think his work is really cool, and he has done a lot of really cool things recently that I hope he posts soon. I felt really, really silly commissioning that when this channel has like 25 subscribers. Like, it does feel like putting the cart before the horse, but I'm happy with it. So I hope you also think it's cool, and go check my friend's art out, and go make bad art, and go read bad art, and open AO3. and find something really crazy in there and see if it speaks to your soul and your heart. And remember that it was written by a person, by a human being just like you. That's all. Bye.